Hi, and welcome to Fretwork Central, the place to learn guitar and bass. In this video, we're going to start talking about string bending. So let's go. One of the coolest lead techniques you can learn is how to bend the strings. String bending, along with vibrato, which actually is another form of string bending, is one of those techniques where you can be very expressive and give the lines that you're playing almost a vocal-like quality that you can't get any other way. In the beginning, it's a little tough, but if you practice it and use proper technique, you can learn how to do this, and it's too much fun, way fun. All right, so one of the things we want to talk about is the string gauge on your guitar. Now, the string gauge has to do with what number of gauge the first string is. So like if you hear people talking about 8 gauge strings or 9 gauge strings or 10 gauge strings, that has to do with the size of the strings, and it relates to what gauge the first string is, the tiny string closest to the floor in the playing position. If you use lighter strings, it's going to be a little bit easier to bend, especially in the beginning. So if you use like 8 gauge strings, or even now they're making 8.5s, which is what's on this guitar. And this guitar is tuned to standard pitch, although most of my guitars are tuned to half a step down. If you go up to 9 gauge strings or even 10s, that's all right. Anything bigger than that, you're going to have a problem with bending. All right, so when you're starting to bend, one of the main things that you have to think about is your hand position. And what you want to do is grip the neck right around the 5th fret in like a C chord type grip from the open C chord that we all learned down here. And that's what we want to do. We don't want it to be like a bar chord kind of grip, more like a C chord where your thumb is up above the neck, touching 6, and your first finger is wrapped around there, and you kind of clamp on there with your thumb and your first finger, because all of the bending is going to be done with the wrist. The fingers are just going to hold on and stay locked into place, and then we're going to bend the strings actually with the wrist. So what we want to do is we're going to take that 3rd finger and put it on the 3rd string at the 7th fret, 2nd finger right behind it, and then the 1st finger behind that. And the 1st finger isn't really going to push down too hard. It's just kind of hanging out there and holding on with the thumb. That 3rd finger is down, and the 2nd finger is also going to help. It doesn't hurt whatsoever for that 2nd finger to back up your 3rd finger whenever you can on these bends. What you don't want is your 3rd finger down and these fingers hanging out here in space somewhere. Get them down on that string to help you out. And then what we're going to do, our hand is like this. We want to push with the wrist and kind of straighten out our wrist. And by doing that, we're going to push the fingers up and push that string up. Now you should be feeling quite a bit of tension right in the back of your hand a little bit, and maybe even in this part of your hand when you do that. What we want to do is bend that note. We're going to hit that note, which happens to be the note D. 7th fret of the 3rd string is the note D. We're going to hit that note, and we're going to bend it up until it sounds like the note E. Now in figure 1, that's how that would be done. Generally speaking, if you're bending a whole step on the 3rd string, when you get to the 5th, when you push that string up, when that finger touches the 5th string, that's where it's going to be a whole step. Sometimes if you have a tremolo system or something, you might have to push a little bit harder. But basically, when that 3rd finger touches the 5th string, you're at a whole step. There's 2 different ways that you can bend a note. You can pick it, hear that note, and then bend. Or you can use that note as a grace note and just bend right up there as soon as you pick. That's figure 2, the grace note. Now, figure 3 is going to show us a way to match pitch. What we're going to do here is play the D. And since we want to bend that a whole step, we're going to move up 2 frets and hear that note. And I would suggest to slide to that note. Then we're going to go back to the original note and bend it. And we want that bend to sound to get to the same pitch as the 9th fret. That was a little too much there, but that's a good opportunity for me to say it's always better when you're bending if the bend is a little too sharp, if it's a little too high, than if it's too low or if it's flat. Bends that are a little sharp are a lot easier for the ear to take than bends that are flat. And I'll give you an example. We want to hear this. That's pretty much what we want. But if we happen to bend a little too far, that's a little higher than what we want. We could tell it's not quite at the right pitch, but it's not terrible. But then if we don't bend quite far enough, you can really hear that. And weak bends or flat bends that don't get to the right pitch just sound horrible. We're not just pushing the strings around. We are looking for pitch. We're looking for notes. Anytime that you bend a note, there's another note that you're looking for there. So you want to go, and it doesn't matter where you go. You could go anywhere on any string now and do this same thing, where you're going to play whatever the note is, then a whole step higher, and then back to that note, and then bend it. Ooh, that was a little too much. Yeah, if you bend a little hot, a little too much, it's a lot better than if you don't bend quite enough, and that is just terrible. There's another way that you can do this. That, by the way, is figure number 3. If you're following along with the diagrams, figure number 4 is showing us where we can play that reference note on a different string. We can play the 3rd string at the 7th fret, that's a D, and then a whole step higher is E. But we can also play that same E on the 2nd string at the 5th fret. Now you can play that either way, where you hear that note and then bend it, or as a grace note. All right, that's figure number 4. Then we can go to figure number 5. What's happening here, this is called a pre-bend. And this is something else that you could practice, where you bend the note and then hit it and let it come down. And you can move around and do that too. Another thing you could do once you pre-bend it is pick that a couple times. You can also hit that note and bend it up with the grace note and let it come down. Now all that shaking and stuff that you see me doing, that is vibrato, and we're going to talk about that in a different video. Super important though, so don't skip it. All right, so that should get you into doing some bending. Now you can move around. It depends on what string you're on, which direction you're going to bend. If you're on the 1st string, obviously you're going to bend up towards the ceiling. And the 2nd string probably also. Though you could probably get a little bit out of that. On the 3rd string, you can go either way, up or down. And then most of the other, the 3, 4, 5, and 6, you're going to bend down towards the floor. You can experiment with all of this. You can also experiment with what we're going to cover in the next video, but I'll just give you a little teaser for that now, which we don't always have to go a whole step. Although I'm going to recommend that you spend some time practicing whole steps because they're by far the most popular bends. But you can play just a half a step. Like if you wanted to play the 7th fret of the 2nd string and then the 8th fret. Half-step bends are also very common and very cool. You can also bend further than a whole step, like a step and a half, where like if you were to bend the 10th fret on the 2nd string, from 10 to 13, you just want to match that pitch. There's all kinds of different ways that you can bend, and we're going to talk about all of that. Until the next video, keep playing, keep practicing, and keep making great music.